There are people who will make you feel more seen, more understood, and more special than anyone ever has, and they will do it within the first 10 minutes of meeting you. That is not a gift, that is a trap. According to the DSM-5, narcissistic personality disorder affects roughly 6.2% of the American adult population. That's 1 in 16 people. At a bar, in a coffee shop, or on a dating app statistically, they are already sitting across from you. The numbers themselves aren't what should alarm you. Numbers are just data. What's truly terrifying is how consistently undetectable they remain, until it's already too late. True narcissism isn't mere arrogance. It isn't healthy confidence. It's not just someone who loves their own reflection. It is a clinical spectrum. A 7 out of 10 on that spectrum is self-centered. An 8 is a psychological hazard. A 9 does not see you as a human being. They see you as a resource to be harvested. This video is not about demonizing. It is about pattern recognition. There are specific, highly observable behavioral signals hidden in the first conversation, the first text message, the first date, that reveal exactly who you are dealing with. And once you learn to see them, you can never unsee them. There are 2 distinct types of narcissists. They look, act, and sound nothing alike until you know exactly what to look for. The first type walks into a room as if the room had been waiting for their arrival. They speak with the absolute certainty of someone who has never once entertained the possibility of being wrong. They reference their own status casually, the way normal people mention the weather. Their colleagues are always incompetent. Their ex was always the crazy one. Their opinion is never just an opinion. It is the correct assessment of objective reality. This is the grandiose narcissist. Loud, magnetic, immediately recognizable if you know where to look. The grandiose narcissist doesn't hide, they perform. Look closely at this dynamic. This is not a text from someone who misses you. This is a text from a warden who is establishing surveillance and who fundamentally believes that monitoring you is his birthright. Bob has not built a relationship here. He has established a hierarchy. He audited her online status. He cross-referenced her Tinder profile. He cataloged her unavailability as active disrespect. And then in the exact same breath he validated himself by declaring his co-workers are nothing without him. That last sentence wasn't accidental. That is the tell. The grandiose narcissist cannot resist inserting proof of their own superiority, even when it is entirely irrelevant to the conversation. His ego required the dopamine hit. He gave it to himself, inside a message that was supposedly about her. This is the exact point where entitlement merges with surveillance. He has not earned exclusivity, yet he demands it and punishes the absence of it before the first official date has even happened. But grandiose narcissism doesn't always weaponize control right out of the gate. Sometimes it disguises itself as overwhelming adoration, a tidal wave of validation so intense, so hyper-specific, that it feels like the universe has finally sent you the only person who truly sees your worth. This is love bombing, and it is a psychological weapon dressed as a gift. One date. Just one. And Charlie has already mapped out a lifetime and decided she will carry his children. This isn't romance. This is a delusion of projection. He does not know Zara. He has manufactured an idealized, flawless avatar of her, and he is deeply in love with his own creation. The real woman with her own boundaries, flaws, and human pace does not exist to him. What exists is a mirror that reflects back exactly what he needs to see to stabilize his fragile ego. Someone who validates his extraordinary nature. Suddenly, she is the one who is broken. She is the one who failed to perform on his timeline with his mandated intensity. And watch the immediate shift the moment Zara introduces reality. The moment she gently questions the velocity of the relationship. His response is not empathy. His response is emotional punishment. Wow, so you don't feel anything? That is not a question. It is a guilt mechanism. It intentionally reframes her healthy, Logical boundary as an emotional deficiency. Psychological data shows that the love bombing phase with narcissistic men lasts an average of 5.5 months before the mask inevitably slips. That is 5.5 months of feeling like the center of the universe, followed by the slow, agonizing, methodical dismantling of everything you believe to be true. The grandiose type is highly destructive, but there is a second archetype, and in many ways, this one is far more lethal, because this one approaches you not with an aura of dominance, but with a plea of vulnerability. Covert narcissism, also known as vulnerable narcissism, where the grandiose type hides their fragility behind a wall of arrogance. The covert narcissist weaponizes their fragility directly. They appear quiet, soft-spoken, introverted, deeply misunderstood. They present a history of being so profoundly mistreated by the world that their willingness to open up to you feels like an act of monumental courage. And that narrative, the tragic story of a damaged soul finally daring to trust again, triggers a primitive, blinding response in most empathetic people: the savior complex. Clinical research confirms that covert narcissism is highly prevalent in women. Mental health professionals note that it is frequently misdiagnosed as severe anxiety or borderline personality disorder, precisely because the vulnerability feels entirely genuine. It is not. It is an unconscious performance, but a performance nonetheless. Read Kata's message again, slowly. She states she feels safe and unsafe within the exact same sentence. That contradiction is engineered. It creates an immediate emotional double bind that is almost impossible for an empathetic target to untangle. She elevates Christian into the savior role, the only person who can save her, and then, in the same breath, she preemptively convicts him of his future failure. Like everyone else, that single phrase is doing massive psychological heavy lifting. It establishes an impossible standard that Christian must now constantly exhaust himself to outrun. It makes any normal, healthy boundary from him look like abandonment. If he pulls back even an inch, he automatically triggers her trap. He becomes just like all the rest. The victim has successfully become the caretaker, the rescuer, and the covert narcissist's emotional black hole will expand to consume every room, every conversation, and every silence, until there is no air left for anyone else. Both archetypes, grandiose and covert, run on the exact same psychological architecture. The machinery never changes, it only changes its wardrobe. Phase 1, idealization. You are the most magnificent creature they have ever encountered. Phase 2, devaluation. The microdosing of criticism begins. A passing comment about your appearance, a sudden cold shoulder after a minor disagreement, a subtle comparison to someone else. You ignore it because your brain is desperate to get back to the high of phase 1. Phase 3, the discard. Swift, brutal, and often entirely without closure. You are left entirely alone, trying to piece together the wreckage of your reality. Phase 4, hoovering. They return, armed with the exact script, the exact apology, and the exact frequency your nervous system became addicted to during phase 1, and the machine resets. The trauma bond this sequence creates is not a sign of emotional weakness. It is pure neurochemistry, intermittent reinforcement. The unpredictable alternation of intense reward and intense pain creates the exact same chemical signature in the human brain as a severe substance addiction. Your brain cannot tell the difference between love and the survival-driven craving for the original high. But here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody in the self-help space will ever tell you. Narcissists are rarely societal failures. They are often spectacularly successful. They are charming, highly intelligent, and socially elite. They possess a predatory social intelligence. They can read a room faster and more accurately than most licensed therapists. They know exactly what your soul needs to hear before you even realize you lack it. They will be, without question, the most exhilarating, intoxicating human being you have ever allowed into your life. That is not an accident. That is the design. The dark truth that clinical research keeps circling back to, the one that shatters the clean, comfortable narrative of innocent victim and evil villain, is this: the exact same traits that make them absolute monsters in long-term relationships are the precise traits that make them entirely irresistible in early encounters. The unshakable confidence, the blinding intensity, the absolute certainty, the intoxicating way they make you feel chosen out of a crowd. Narcissistic personality disorder is currently classified by modern psychiatry as largely treatment-resistant, not untreatable, but profoundly resistant, because recovery requires the one cognitive faculty that the disorder structurally obliterates: genuine self-reflection, the emotional capacity to look in a mirror and sit with the devastating possibility that you are the problem. That capacity is entirely vacant. You cannot fix a crack in a foundation that you are hardwired to believe is flawless. Most narcissists, by definition, live out their lives convinced they are uniquely perceptive, uniquely mistreated, and uniquely entitled to everything they want. So if you are sitting there watching this right now, if you recognize the text messages, the timing, the loops, the answer is never going to be getting therapy for them. The answer is immediate, radical distance. And the most brutal part of that reality, distance, will, at first, feel exactly like withdrawal. The human brain has a severe, hardwired bias toward consistency. It is deeply, fundamentally resistant to rewriting a story once it has already invested in the plot. If you decided early on that this person was your soulmate, your safe harbor, your once-in-a-lifetime love, your brain will work overtime to protect that narrative, even as the mountains of horrifying evidence stack up against it. This isn't because you are stupid. It is because your brain is trying to protect its emotional investment. It protects the script. It protects you from the devastating psychological cost of admitting you were entirely wrong about someone. The narcissist didn't exploit a weakness in your character. They exploited a feature of your humanity, the very traits that make you a loyal partner, a patient friend, and someone willing to believe in the good of people. That exact human architecture is their front door. So the real question you need to face today is not whether you were naive. The question is this: what was the very first signal you received in that first conversation? That first text? That split-second moment where your gut told you something was slightly off that you consciously chose to explain away? Because the signal was there. It is always there. Drop a single word in the comments right now. What was the first red flag you ignored?